Good morning, everyone. I'm ready with my cup of coffee today. I have a Keurig coffee maker, so I used to waste coffee. I'd make a whole pot, and I was the only one at that time that drank it. The kids were little. My wife didn't drink coffee. She drank tea religiously every day, multiple times a day. I have morning coffee and I'm done. So I used to waste coffee. So even though I spent a little extra money for the K-Cups, I'm not throwing coffee away. So I'm, in essence, saving money. Okay. This will probably be my last video of the month. I'm not quitting making videos. The last video of the month. This one will come out on Saturday. Like I said, I'm trying to get ahead, knowing that this weekend is going to be very hectic here and probably everywhere. It's Labor Day weekend. It's the last fling, the last hurrah of the summer. What would happen if this were the last hurrah ever? We don't know when we're going to die. We also don't know when we're going to get raptured. So you always have to think of those that will be left behind. What are you going to do for them? You've got to do it all in advance. It's like having a will. Relatives, if they're still here, will fight over your belongings and everything you've got. And you may get the most arrogant relative come in and go through everything first and throw out everything you left behind for helping them to become Christians. So you got to be able to stop that. You got to tie, if you got money, you got to tie it to them watching videos, listening to you. Whatever you're going to do, you got to tie your belongings to that so that they can't just come in and shove it all in the trash and continue doing whatever they're doing, which is not what God wants. As soon as we get raptured or when you die, our problems are over. We're going to heaven. That's the course, that's the plan for either option. We're going to be happy. We're done. We've passed the test, survived, whatever, to go on. But you've got people down here that you've got to think about. What are you going to do for them? I've told you that we need to prep, because I don't know when we're getting out of here. What are you going to do with all that stuff when we're gone? You can't take it with you, and that was never the plan. The plan was to have enough prepping food for you and then some left over for others who are left behind. So what you've got to be able to do is to make sure that you stage this. You don't bring a kid in the room and put a whole pie in front of them and tell them not to have any. You cut out a piece of the pie and you put it in front of them and give them a fork and a glass of milk and tell them to have at it. But they can't have the rest of it immediately. You might give them a second piece later on, but you have to manage that. Well, you got to do the same thing with all the other stuff that you've got. You've got to manage it. Okay, so when we leave, chaos will abound everywhere. We're the restraining force. And when we're gone, Satan knows he's got a little bit of time. He knows how long. He probably knows the timeline better than we do, I'm sure. So he's going to kick it into high gear. You better have everything in place for your friends and relatives. appoint somebody who you think is close to be the executor, if you will. Wills, you say, I can't afford a will. I haven't got any money for that. Go online. There's places where there are free wills you just have to fill out. And then sections where you can type in what you want. Fill it out, sign it, find somebody who's a notary, get them to put their stamp of approval on it. Now, if you've got enough money to afford legal counsel, then you hire an attorney to do that. But that's going to cost more money. You do whatever you can. I'm not picking one way over another. I'm just saying there are options. And there are free options. But have that in place. Everyone should have a will anyway. I have seen family members fight over an estate, even with a will. But they can argue and scream and crawl on the floor and act like a 3-year-old, but it isn't going to do them any good if it's in writing. So make sure you've got that. You should have a will anyway. For whatever reason you leave, there should be a will. Okay, so one of the things that you can do for your friends and family, and I'm assuming that you've already talked to them and that they don't want to accept Christ. But just be nice about it. Don't be in their face and say, you're an idiot, you're stupid, I hate you. You know, that is not the way God would want it to be done anyway. But just say, look, I respect your position. You have the right to pick any decision you want. Just consider mine. Please, just consider it. And then push it aside. But don't forget that we had this conversation, because you will need it at some point in the future. And they're going to laugh at it and say, well, that's fine, and you can have that position too. But remember, I'm a Christian, which means I've got connections to God, whether you believe it or not. So I'm just telling you, this is available. Make a video. I've got lots of videos up here, but I don't know if they will be available afterwards. Eventually, these will all get taken down at some point. And you know the timeline. We've been given the timeline. The first half of the tribulation, we're going to see the Antichrist. We're going to have 7 years of peace. Why only 7? It's not going to last that long anyway. He signed a peace treaty. You're in the war in Israel, quote unquote. Yeah. They'll build the temple. Most of the Sunni Muslims agree with Saudi Arabia and even Egypt to a degree that the Temple Mount means nothing to them. It's all a we hate the Jews land grab. That's all it is. So they're going to build the temple. They're going to go back to their sacrifices. They're going to get their 2 witnesses and the 144,000. They're going to have what they think is utopia. They'll have the Messiah with them. Little do they know. And they won't know that he's the Antichrist or the anti-Messiah until he defiles the temple. That's halfway through. All the stuff happening up in the first part, the seals and the trumpets, for the most part, that's just going to come in and it's going to appear that, it's going to appear gradual. God's not going to hit everybody hard right off the bat. That's reserved for the second half. When the wrath of God comes in the bowls, that's when there's basically, okay, I've had it with you people. There will still be Christians born after that, but there won't be as many as in the first half. Because the first half, they're going to see miracles. They're going to see that quote Christ and think he's the real thing. You've been telling them about Jesus Christ all this time, and here this guy shows up. So make a video. Again, be loving and kind, and make the video in such a way, you're a salesperson now, make it in such a way that they will rewatch the video just to see you talk. You know, if they're a brother or sister, father, sibling, they're going to miss you, and they can watch the video. Don't make it in your face, I hate you, you're stupid, you know, none of that kind of stuff. It's got to be loving, gentle, provide the information. Again, if you're prepping, all your prepping stores should be covered with tracts. You should make sure that there are more than one Bibles around so that they can find them. Put somebody's name on it. Say, this is a gift to you. Hang on to that. It's a keepsake. You know, if you choose to read it, if not, just know that this is a loving message from me to you. And the way that I love can be explained in this book if you choose to read it, and put some bookmarks in. Okay. Again, have your will, because you don't want to trust all this stuff to the government. And that's good advice for every human being that lives in a country where the government will step in if you don't have rules. You can provide written copies of everything, and I would have multiple, just in case somebody decides to grab one and tear it up. All the time that you're talking to them while you're on earth, again, you should not be in their face. Just be loving. Eventually, they're going to want to know why you're happy all the time. I mean, if you want to spring for it, you could buy the Left Behind series and leave it out. Make sure it plays in your video device, whatever it is. Be sure to warn them about the mark of the beast, because that won't happen very quickly. It won't happen immediately, but it will happen within that 3.5-year period, because that's the work of the Antichrist. And he's only got 3.5 years, the Antichrist, not Satan. The Antichrist only has 3.5 years. Once we're gone, because we're not going to be here during the tribulation. Coffee. And you won't be able to reach them from heaven. How much are we going to get to see? I don't know. I really don't. I don't know if we're going to the clouds to meet them. Are we going to sit there and hang our feet over the edge and watch? I don't know. Be interesting. But we won't be able to say. Right behind you, that book. Pull it out and look in it. There's something for you. You won't be able to say that. So you got to have all this planned out. Now, it's not up to you. Remember, it's the Spirit that's going to do anything that you do to help people to come to Christ. So be praying about it. If you don't know what to do, add it to your prayers. God, give me the ideas of things that I can do to help my family members that aren't going to make it. Hopefully all family members will be together. But if not, God will still take care of them, because they've been in your prayers. They should be. Here comes our park ranger. I'm a little bit later than I normally am, but he's also a little bit earlier than he's been. So I'm going to stop and say hi a little bit here. All right. Let's see. Depending on how tied they are to the world, all those ties are going to eventually break. The money's going to go away. Possessions are going to go away. Remember the 2030 organization. You'll be without anything and be happy. You won't own anything and be happy. That's what they want. They want big, dumb servants on the world and themselves. That's all they want. Everybody else they're going to get rid of. In the seals, a quarter of the world population dies. Add that to the rapture and however many Christians get to go, there's going to be a lot less people. And in the trumpets, which is also part of this, the first part, a third of the population dies. That's over half. So there's going to be a lot less people. That's sort of the good news. That's the bad news and the good news. A lot less people means there's a lot less food needed, but there's destroying food too. Social media will probably go away. They don't want you having access. Look at what they do in China. They restrict on YouTube, or they restrict the internet to where you can go. And they restrict what you can do. In the UK, they're arresting you if you're doing stuff on there that they don't like. They're not blocking you, they're arresting you. That's Big Brother and their thumb on top, pushing down. You know what the world's like now. It's going to get a lot worse. Just leave them helpful advice. And you don't have to mention God every other word. The book of Esther is a perfect book to learn about Jesus and God, and he's not mentioned in the entire book. So you can disguise stuff. Be assured that you tell them God loves them, that you love them, and that you're going to be cheering them on from heaven, wherever you are in heaven. We don't know. We're not going to a wedding feast the minute we go up. We're not done. He's still inviting people to the wedding, and he will be until the very end. So you can't, I don't see how he could start the wedding feast while people are suffering and dying. That's not the way I would see God doing things. Convince them that they're going to have to work with, and this is something you could include in your video and or your written instructions, they need to find other Christians when they accept Christ and band together and form underground Christian groups. That's essentially what they do in countries like Iran, even in countries like China and Russia to a degree, although they have an Orthodox church there. You're not free as a Christian totally, even in Russia. And the irony is, looking at the world and how bad the world is, Russia has invited Christians to come live there. Yeah, if you can believe that. Pretty much you need to just tell them to be prepared, like you've tried to do. I'm wearing my Bruce Lee shirt. I never met him. I've been to his dojon in Oakland, but I've never met him. He died far too young before he could get out and around. When I was there, he was making another movie in China, so I never got to meet him. But and I'm a black belt. I'm a black belt in Taekwondo, and I was this close to being a black belt in Hapkido, and the world got in the way. My mother almost died and things like that. So in any case, the bottom line is we spend all of our time in learning, preparing for what you would do in case of a situation. I've done other things where you do the same thing. Scuba diving, you prepare for things going wrong, What happens if you run out of air? Your tanks have a little switch, and it's a valve, and there's a bar that comes down on your tank, and you can find that and you can pull it, and that will give you another few minutes of air. Should be enough to get you to the surface on a single tank, because on a single tank you're not going to have to worry about decompression. I used to ski, and I used to teach skiing, snow skiing. The first thing we teach people how to do is to get up when you fall down. Eventually, once we make sure you know that, then we're going to go up and try to learn how to ski on the bunny hill, as it's called. We don't take you to the top. You got to learn how to navigate with big sticks on your feet. And there's safety in that. Now, it's really hard to get hurt if you just simply follow the rules that you're taught in class. If you're not going through lessons, you're on your own. I've flown. Same thing. We have to learn what to do in case of an emergency. We have to know that there's a frequency you can dial in and declare an emergency on that people are monitoring for emergencies. If you've got a transponder, it's a little beacon that goes out. You put in a certain number in there. It's a 4-digit number, and you put in a certain number. I'm not giving any advice here because I don't want people coming back at me. I know what the numbers are, but I'm not giving that. This is not what this class is about. But you put a number in there, and you push the button. It's called squawking, and it will, on the radar screen, you see a ping, and it radiates out, and that number will be there. And that's an emergency number. They may eventually tell you why you're on, because that's an emergency number, and they don't want you using it and everybody else using it and then not knowing where you're at. If they do contact you on that radio frequency that you're supposed to be on, they're going to tell you maybe to change the squawk to a different number. They may tell you to get off of that frequency and go to another frequency. That if you get lost, come back to this one. But they'll tell you to switch to another one. That way you've got a unique frequency and squawk that people can find. This is an emergency thing. You can fly a plane within a reasonable distance with no power. They will glide. Even a 747 will glide a little ways. The bigger and heavier the plane, the less the glide will have. I flew small planes, Cessnas. If I was in the pattern and the power went out, not a problem. I can just come around and land. If I was further out, it depends on how far out I was. Speaking of planes, I think I have one going overhead. So you spend your time preparing for what could be an easily recoverable emergency if you're prepared. And just tell them, whatever happens, if you need to stand your ground on this. If you become a Christian, you don't have to go out and tell everybody immediately, because if the government starts arresting and killing Christians, you don't necessarily want to tell people. You can go, shh, are you a Christian? And if they say yes, you can go, I'm one too. Now, they could be lying. If you are killed, there will be many, many Christian martyrs. That's going to be the primary way to leave the earth once the tribulation starts. There will be blood all over the harlot. She's going to be the ruling government in the world. The Antichrist will eventually depose her and take over. But she will have the blood of martyrs on her. And they kill Christians around the world now. In the West, we're pretty lucky because we had a good foundation. We've survived through a lot of this, but that's going away. All right, we have an imminent rapture coming. If you haven't done any of these things that I've talked about, get busy. It doesn't take any time to really, if you just put Put down what you want to say and do all the things that I've talked about. And prepping, you should have been prepping forever. You'd be saving on the cost of things right now. Get it all started, have it ready, have a plan. If you've got somebody that you trust who's maybe that close to becoming a Christian but not quite there, they might be someone to trust. Pray about it first, of course, everything. God may say, give it to so-and-so, because they're actually closer, but you don't know. Make sure that somebody will watch over this stuff for you in your absence. We're not long for being down here. I've said this before. I think something major is going to happen in September. Now, it may be the end. It may be the actual date. I think moves over for the Revelation 12 sign moves into October. That time frame, September, early October. We're looking at something major happening. The price of gas is coming down, so they realize as they're getting closer to the election. Are we going to have an election? Don't know. They tried to scare away the big T, and he didn't scare. In fact, he got defiant. So that lets them know that they either have to go through with it or block it one way or another. And that may be what's coming. I don't know. There could be another major 9/11 event of some sort. They don't have to blow up buildings. They could blow up Atlanta Airport, basically with a major bomb, blow up the terminal, blow up the planes. They could do all kinds of stuff. There are so many enemy combatants in our country that have come across the border. Every once in a while they'll find one, and they get lucky, find one, and they deport them. But it's just like drugs. For every one they catch, there's a million more that have gotten past. Okay, they're here and ready to go. They have a plan. They're not sitting around waiting. They have a plan. They're just waiting for someone to say, go. So whether we are here or not, it doesn't matter. Our rapture will save us at the last second. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless.